Hello and welcome to the BSI Education Podcast with me, Matthew Childs.
And me, Alan Sellers.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And how about you, Matthew?
I'm very good. Now, in these podcasts, our aim is to bring you the stories behind standards and standardisation. In this episode, we're here from two young engineers, Navdeep Mehay and Kat Rosier, and their journeys from standards users to standards makers. Now, both Kat and Navdeep work in the energy sector, and as they tell us, becoming standards makers has not only been something they've really enjoyed, it has had a hugely positive impact on their professional development and careers.
I particularly enjoyed hearing about how the industry that they work in is considering the environmental impact of what it does and is trying to develop standards in that space.
Now, we really enjoyed our conversation with both Navdeep and Kat, and we hope you do too. So, in this episode of the podcast, we are delighted to be joined by Kat Rosier. Hello, Kat.
Hello, Matthew.
And by Navdeep Mehay. Hello, Navdeep.
Hello, Matthew.
Kat, if we could start with you, can you tell us about your current job role and what it involves?
I'm an electrical and electronic design engineer working for a company called Veolia Nuclear Solutions. I effectively design robots for nuclear power plants, especially within fusion and the fusion industry. It's quite an interesting thing. It's all the aspects of design from concept through to final design and manufacture, and making sure that all of the requirements are met.
In terms of obviously working in the nuclear industry, I assume that standards are important for your particular job and for the organisation.
Yes, hugely, because when you're thinking about nuclear, well, if we think about our Chernobyls, our Fukushimas, our 3 Mile Islands, when nuclear goes wrong, it's obviously a very, very big thing. And so you really have to consider every eventuality, best practice, and what we know is tried and tested and works. Standards are incredibly important from that perspective, so that you know that you've thought about every safety case and you've done your HAZOPs correctly and you've done your risk mitigation correctly.
Obviously, this is an education podcast. Now, I know you do. You're a big promoter of STEM. Do sort of STEM outreach work. You able to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about STEM outreach. I think it's really important where within engineering you can change the world, and we are kind of learning and seeing now how only having kind of one type of person really influences your design, and you don't get the perspective of others. So the more people that we can encourage into science and engineering and maths and technology, the better. So, thinking about people from different sort of ethnic backgrounds, different genders, different countries, and different economic groups, it's just kind of getting their perspective and showing people that you can be a scientist, you can be an amazing engineer, you can change the world and have a fantastic career and lifestyle out of it.
And Nav, how about you? What's your current job and what does it involve?
Yes, so my current role is as a group leader within a government organization known as UK Atomic Energy Authority. So it's similar to nuclear, but it's more safer. It's nuclear fusion, the principle that we work on. And we have a fusion machine, experiment machine in Column Science Center known as Mast Upgrade. And I'm responsible for the group which looks after the electronics, the control systems, the FPGAs, the protection system. And that's when it becomes very, very important to consider standards in everything that we do.
What is a day as a group leader like in your role?
It starts with having a look into where are we in terms of the commissioning of the machine, and where can we support our team? Where can I support my team to progress their term? So my role is to ensure that my group has everything that they need to progress on the commissioning of this machine. So it's more of the technical liaison with my team, more of some of the approvals of the technical documentation, sometimes liaising with suppliers to see do we have exactly what we need, and so that's and working with senior management to ensure that they're up to date with the status of the machine.
Okay, so when you and your team are working on the commissioning of the machine, how do standards impact that? How are they used?
Well, actually, it's a big part. We have UKAEA has a good set of internal documents, but all of those documents, or I can say, they refer to BSI standards. Now, it could be for the electrical installation, it could be for bonding, it could be for the equipment purchase, or even for designing and building on-site equipment, which we do very often because of our requirement. Fusion is new. It's so the equipment that we need in terms of the protection systems, they're not available in the market. So we have to design and build them on site. And so that's when we have to refer to BS standards when we buy those equipments, even when we design those protection systems. Uh, Other than that, like I mentioned that about the technical documentation, all of those technical documents, the templates are actually based on BSI standards. I think if I can say that the standards, they do half of the work for us, to be honest. So we don't have to write new specifications. So it's already there as a good practice. And because it's an industrial standard, we can liaise with anyone and then mention those standards, and then we all on the same page. I mean, we even follow like set standards for PPE. That's an example. So yes, the standards, they become like very integral part of our day-to-day activities.
Very interesting. I want to just pick up on the industry standard there. So using an industry standard, what does that mean in terms of how that standard was developed?
So yes, it's interesting now. As a standard maker, I've got a bit of insight into it. That on some of the committees, you can have manufacturers as the majority, you can say, and then you can see sometimes those standards, they reflect what exactly they need. So, but if we have the end user's voice within standards making, which I present to on my committees, then we have a balance of both for exactly what customer needs in balance with what manufacturers prefer. So that's the balance we have to manage when we actually make those standards.
Okay, so as industry comes together in a technical committee and represents manufacturers and end users and other stakeholders within that industry, you end up with an industry standard that saves you half, roughly, of the work that you and your team would have to do if you hadn't gained that standard from that work.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there was an example of recently I was working on a chart recorders standard used in, say, power stations, and I had experience in power stations, and I could bring my expertise or my experience into that. This is how we use it, and then that's why there was some discussion on the time required, and then that's when I could actually input from the end user's voice into standards making, and that was implemented. So it's benefiting all of the end users with one voice or collaborative voice from by listening by the chair and the manufacturers.
Thank you for that insight, Nav. One thing that I'd like to ask you about is, what's it like being a STEM ambassador?
I do volunteer for as a judge or as a help offerer at school challenges and some competitions. You may have a Big Bang Fair, which happens in UK every year. And I think it's take it as my duty as a chartered engineer to outreach to schools and the children, so that we can gain their interest into STEM subjects. And we need it. I think we desperately need it. And that's, I feel proud when I'm there. And then I think it could have benefited me when I was a kid to get someone telling me the inside of what happens in the industry. People do enjoy, or the little people do enjoy, and listening to the stories when I tell that I'm working on this fusion machine where you can get the temperature in the machine 10 times hotter than sun. That's, no one has heard of that, because we know sun is the hottest thing. And then when we say that we can have hotter temperature than sun on earth, I get people listening to me, and that's when I can tell them what do I do, what does it involve about my team, what do they do. And it's like a more of a sharing. Yes, definitely I share my experience, but I do get their interest. And even if I can get a couple listening to me getting into STEM subjects, I think I would say I'm doing a good job.
Well, you certainly got me listening there.
So, Kat, Navdeep was explaining there some of the work that he does on some standards and committees that he's involved with. Can you tell us what standards you're working on and what that involves?
So I'm involved in a couple of different kind of projects across the IEC and through the BSI on various sizes, but the two main standards groups that I get involved in are AMT 10, which has the parallel of SEG 10, as well on the international level, which is to do with ethics in robotics. That's something that's, I think going forward as a society and, globally as a human race is going to become more and more important when we think about robots being more integrated into our lives, especially in the care sector. I build robots for nuclear power plants where you don't actually want to send people into those environments because they're very, very dangerous, or it's because it's, a feat that can't be done by humans. And so the utilization of them is amazing in terms of the potential of what we can do. But whilst doing that, especially when we think about AI and mapping and integrating it into things like the police service or the NHS, we need to be very, very conscious of the ethics side of that. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And how you can measure that as well, and measure it, not just from a, say, a British perspective, but thinking about other countries, societies, political structures throughout the world, and what we can all agree on are ethics and things that we need to consider. So the other type of standards that I mainly focus on are on the nuclear side, which the main group that I work on is NC9, and it's quite interesting to see the industry come together, because so they work on many, many different standards, some of which are revising them, some are writing it for new and emerging technology that no one's ever done before. And so, it's kind of like a first time round. And when you get involved with standards on that level, it's very interesting. So NC9, it's interesting to see the different stakeholders that they have within that group, because a standard about, say, nuclear fuel for fission plants, the stakeholders you've got there, you've got sort of people that are responsible for disposing it. You've got people that are responsible for transporting it. You've got the people that are making it. You've got, environmental activists or people who have interest within that from a government point of view or from a regulation point of view. And then you've actually got the people that are going to be using it. So there's all those different things, and especially within nuclear, we have to consider the entire life cycle of something. It's not something of, buy it, it's a cheap part, it's disposable, and X, Y, and Z. You have to think, especially within the fission world, that something will last for 10,000 years. And you need to be conscious and make the right decision of that through every single thing and how future generations will deal with it. So it's interesting to see all these different people with all their individual concerns come together and have a discussion about what's the best way forward. How do we justify this in terms of what we're doing?
So it's just on that's really interesting, because what were your how did you start? What were your motivations for getting involved in this? Was it because you just felt it was obviously a really, really important work to be involved with because of its impact on the world and about how we live, or was it something else? What were your motivations to get involved in standards making in the first place?
So standards making, it was quite an interesting one. I'm quite new to nuclear. I came from sort of a heavy industrial manufacturing and chemical background. But in the past, when I used standards, they were like this mythical thing off in the background. And, I use them every day. And so many people had such a fear about them in terms of not interpreting them correctly or justifying that they had complied or proving things or writing them into their design. And so I was very much, I'll now take the bull by the horns and actually read through them, make my notes, see how it complies with what I'm actually, or see how it applies to what I'm actually working on, know when I'm exempt and when I'm not exempt, and make sure I have the most up-to-date information. So I used them for years. And my company was a member of the BSI, and we used to get the newsletters come in, and I kind of got inspired to actually start looking at it, because as a young person, I always thought that standards makers, they were retired folk that had 50 years plus of experience within the industry, and you sort of needed to kind of like already have the key to be able to get in, and that it was such a difficult kind of world. When I saw on a BSI newsletter an advert for the BSI Young Professional Programme, or the IEC Young Professional Programme, really quite interesting that the IEC gave that kind of opportunity of like, see what we actually do, come and get involved. We want more young people coming in. We want the next generation, and to really promote this and get people involved in actually writing the standards themselves.
Now, I want to come back and ask you in a second, Kat, about the commitment and about practically what it involves on a day-to-day basis to be a standards maker. But now, just to you as well, obviously you've taken part in the IEC programme too. Just from your perspective, again, as Kat was talking there, sort of your motivations and your how did you start? Why did you want to get involved in standards in the first place?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was working as an engineer in electrical power industry, and then I used standards while writing specifications and carrying out some supplies inspections. But I never knew, like Kat mentioned, that it was in our heads that it's actually for older generation who has got years of experience. So I never knew that I could get involved in making them until I heard Alan of sharing his experience at a BSI Standards Conference at IET in London. I think it was 2017. And after the conference, I had a chat with Alan, and I asked, how can you be part of standards? Because the think it's more of a myth, I can say, that it's for the older generation who has got 20-30 years of experience. And then Alan mentioned that no, and then he shared the information with me, and that's how I knew that I can be part of this. And then I attended the IEC Young Professional Program. So it all started with knowing about the process of standards making. That I had the curiosity that how do the standards are being made. And then once I attended the general meeting as part of the Young Professional Program in Vladivostok, Russia, so I gathered that how important is it for the end users and the manufacturers to have their saying in the process. And it was a good experience, definitely. And then I witnessed some of the standards making meetings, standards management board meeting, which was definitely an eye opener. And then I reflected on myself, because I've been working in industry. I knew on many of the equipment, on the instrumentation equipment, and I felt that I can definitely help BSI and IEC on making those standards. And that's how I got involved after the Young Professional Program, and got involved with GEL 65, which is a committee for measurement and control for process equipment. And that's how I got involved into it. And then I'm a member of, I do represent UK at a working group within the committee.
But you both very nice, very beautifully explained, I think, the importance of being involved in standards to make a difference to the sectors in which you're working, and also to the planet as well. So these wider issues. But in terms of the commitment, obviously it's another thing for you to do, and another part of your job, or even outside of your job. So could you tell us about the sort of the practical commitment you have to make to becoming a standards maker? What sort of time does it involve over 12 months, for example?
Yeah, so as a member of UK National Standards Body, that's BSI, so I represent on one of IEC working group. So BSI committee members meet twice a year in London. Some people meet in person, and some people on Zoom, for example. And then as an IEC working group, we meet again twice a year for 3 days, that is. And on both these, like I said, both these sessions, people can be on site, or could attend via Zoom. And in addition to that, that's the on-site or physical meetings. In addition to that, I receive correspondence from a committee. And so I participate. It's entirely up to me how much I want to participate using my knowledge and experience into those discussions, into those comments, into those votings. So that's the commitment, which in terms of the numbers, like I said, for meetings is twice a year for each, but the hours, you can say, if you can spend a couple of hours in a week, I think that will be more than enough to go through your weekly correspondence. It also depends on how many standards are you involved in. So for me, that's how much I and how much I spend on it.
And Kat, is that a similar experience that you have?
Definitely, yeah. So as it is a voluntary thing, it's how much effort and time you want to put into it from a personal perspective. Some people put in, loads of hours. Some people kind of put what they can when they can, and committees are, as a whole, really flexible with that. So, if you have a busy time period at work and so you kind of need to be a bit more quiet, they're very respectful of that. And sometimes, so for people like myself, because my main job isn't within standards, it's a supplement to my job, a lot of committees are very good at sort of saying, yeah, you can zoom into a meeting, you don't have to come down to London, because for those of us that aren't based near to London, it can be quite difficult to kind of pop in for a morning meeting. A morning meeting may actually involve 5 or 6 hours of travel, and they're very respectful of that in terms of having them remotely. And I try and make some. I'm not able to go to international ones, so I do more of the national ones and just Skype in to the international ones. That may change in the future with support from work, and it is very good in that sense. And it's kind of like, if in terms of going through all the correspondence, so the work that other people have done and projects that you're working on, it's you put in what you want to, but I would say that the more you put in, the more you get out.
I think, yes, I will echo Kat here that, this is the beauty of being involved in standards, that you represent yourself, your organization or your institute, and it's entirely dependent on individuals' time and commitment. BSI would like as much as participation as possible, but the committee, they appreciates if you want to focus on one working group, it's completely acceptable and appreciated.
You mentioned now that you went to Vladivostok as part of your when you participated in the IEC program, and Kat, you went to Bazan, I think.
Yes.
Just for that, whether the attraction of was international travel and international cooperation and networking, was that again part of the attraction for getting involved in standards making? Kat, maybe ask you first.
Well, I think it was quite an interesting one because, sort of using British standards as I was doing kind of like back in heavy industry, and sort of using them as a user as opposed to as a standards writer, you don't understand the scale of the international work that actually goes on. And in terms of, so many people refer to them as being British standards, and you go, it's not actually a British standard, it's an international standard, or it's a Senelec standard. And it's, it does exist outside of Britain. And it was quite amazing because in my jobs, I'd done quite a bit of traveling in terms of commissioning work, installation work, and servicing, and that includes international travel. And so I already had quite a good idea of working with other cultures and, working in France for a couple of months and things like that, or, going off to Spain or Finland or wherever it was. And I really enjoyed that because it was interesting to see how people did things differently. And you really actually get a feel for that in terms of, I can recall working in France for a couple of months and spending time with, young graduates and things like that. And it was very interesting to actually get their perspective on engineering. And it was actually a lot more different than I would have thought. But it was interesting that we had to kind of like work out where each other was and work together for a solution to get a machine commissioned. A country that was on the top of my list of places to go. It wasn't like I was dying to get there. But I thought, well, why? It's a really good opportunity from a personal point of view. And I was actually really amazed to see South Korea. I thought it was an amazing country. I did struggle a little bit with the food, as I'm allergic to shellfish, but it was really quite interesting to see it. And when you're actually there as well, you're experiencing all the different cultures. So on the Young Professional Programme, there's people from pretty much every continent in the world there. So you can have a conversation with, sort of people who work in America and sort of Africa and Asia, and you're all just kind of like talking about the same thing, which is really interesting. So I really, really like that multicultural perspective of it.
And those international connections and networks, Nav, have you maintained those? Have you built on those after your Vladivostok experience?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So I'm in touch with many of my fellow young professionals from there. We do most of the time we do touch base on LinkedIn, so we get to see what they have been doing, and it's amazing stuff. Some of them are taking the young professional and standards making to their universities, which is amazing to see, and what they have been achieving, working on different standards, working on the think main thing is working on the goals which UN has produced on the SDGs. So how they are actually trying to fulfill those goals using their experience working with the standards. So yes, definitely in touch with those, and it's a great experience.
How did you find going to Vladivostok?
It was amazing, amazing. I mean, I was one of three who was selected under this young professional program in 2017, and it started with, like I said, about being curious of knowing the process of standards making, and it came fully funded trip by BSI and the partner. So yes, why not? So, but I ended up getting the bigger picture of standards making and totally gained my interest. Like I said, we had other young professionals. It was from, I think, 70 different countries, and we had over 200 young professionals. So you can imagine that week we collaborated, we worked together with each other, we presented to IEC chair and other exec members. So it was a brilliant experience. I think it's a unique experience. I don't think I will get similar experience again. But looking at the cultural point of view, it was very good. I can't find the exact words how to describe it, because definitely we get to see new culture. We were taken to some shows in the evenings. On one of the day we went to the safari park. We had quite a good experience there, and think there were some other challenges. I think personal challenges for me was because I'm vegetarian, and so that was a challenge for me, which again that's something I learned. And also knowing about the emergency procedures. So we were in a hotel. I can share an example. We were in a hotel, and we were just settling in our hotel room, and then we found a bag with a gas mask, and a rope, and that was the emergency exit procedure or exit plan. That in case you hear this alarm, then get this mask on, and then if you want to get out of the building, you can't get out the door, then here is a rope. So that was a totally different experience. It was funny to watch, but it's amazing to see that how it is being done in different parts of the world.
So normally in a hotel bedroom, you might find a Gideon Bible, but you found a gas mask and a rope.
Yes.
You've both spoken about how the cultures that you experienced in those different parts of the world and internationally have challenged you and caused you to think in different ways and reevaluate how you see the world. I was wondering how that has impacted your careers, and in particular, what's changed since you started making standards?
Yes, the impact on career. I think I can proudly say that the experience I gained working within standards, it played a very big role for me in achieving chartered engineering status because I've worked with experts, technical experts, nationally, internationally. It definitely, you gain more technical knowledge, you get better. And also it's these soft skills that you learn how to deal with different cultural people, how to deal with challenging environments, how to deal with some where you can't find majority. And all of these, it gets built into your personality and use it at work and develops the overall personality, I will say. So yeah, definitely played a big role in so I shared some examples in my chartered engineering interview about BSI standards making process. And also the time that you spend on standards making, that's part of your CPD hours, and definitely that accumulates your hours that you need to maintain for your professional development. And I think you can't get better than that. You are helping a society, you're working on something you are interested in, and you're accumulating hours for your professional development. So definitely it has affected my career in a very big positive way.
What have your colleagues made of it? Have they commented at all?
You definitely get a sense of respect, definitely, because so you are, from your knowledge, you are helping the wider society, the overall, I will say, in terms of my engineering experience, I'm helping the industry as much as I can do. So definitely you gain the respect from your colleagues. And in terms of the organizations, I will say the UKAA, they support professional development and they support standards making processes. So they do encourage people to, like myself, to go on to the standards making meetings and to participate, because as a fusion experiment industry, we're working on, we will have a fusion power generating machine soon. So we want to start working on those standards now, so that when we come to the point where we have the machine ready, we already have the standards in the market for manufacturers to follow.
Same question for you, Kat. How's being involved with standards and the journey that you've had impacted your career?
Well, Alan, it's really had a very, very positive impact on my career. That the BSI offer quite a few free training courses in sort of soft skills and things like that, and those are all for committee members. But it's also in terms of the development of your soft skills through the BSI. Well, end up doing things like this, presenting quite a bit and having meetings. Sort of working on conflict resolution and things like that, because you always must come to a consensus in a group. So you get a lot of experience within the soft skills. You're not just looking at a circuit board with a couple of resistors. You're actually getting out there and managing your team and supporting people. And there's a lot of that it helps to develop, to actually have that in a similar way that doing STEM outreach does. And I really enjoyed that. It's been very beneficial. In terms of like my current employer, they are very supportive of it as an idea, because as a small and growing company, I think standards were, yes, quite mythical to them, and especially with younger graduates and things like that, it's people are very interested in it in terms of Kat understands standards, Kat understands standard language, and gets all the scope, and sort of knows how to read them, knows how to process them in a very formulaic way, which you just gain with time, and that's seen as a huge benefit for the team. My boss, I mean, he's been using sort of nuclear and electrical safety standards for years, and he I remember when he kind of like first met me, he was very much so, I've just never met a committee member, and he kind of said, like, I just thought that they didn't exist. And he was really interested to actually kind of sort of see what I was doing with standards and actually get that involvement. And it's across discipline now, in terms of I'm a bit of an expert within the company on standards, so I'll have systems engineers or mechanical engineers, mechatronic, and of course your software and your electrical kind of coming to me to go, Kat, how do I word this? How do I show compliance with this? How do I test this? How do I do this? And it's quite nice to be able to, help your company move and evolve and really get the most out of standards.
So, Kat, just listening to both of you speak there, obviously you're helping to break down the barriers of what people perceive standards makers to be and what standards making to be. So I just wonder, as a final question, what advice you'd give others, or maybe give advice to your younger self about getting involved in standards. What would you say to your younger self?
I think the advice I can give to younger myself or to other people is that I will encourage people to reflect on how much we actually use standards, how much we are surrounded by standards, and we use them without even knowing. And based on our experiences, what we do, I think what I can do is we should actually check on BSI website. How can we, from our experience, help shape standards? It could be from your technical experience, or it could be I can ask my fellow motorbike riders that you wear the armor, jackets, and if you can actually participate in standards making for those as well. So it is not just the work, you are the end user. You may be part of some of the associations, so you can have your voice heard in the first place where we actually define those standards. And the employees are definitely, like Kat did mention about the robotic maintenance, the new technology is evolving so fast. It's beyond our imagination, and we did not predict that it's going to evolve at a such speed. So it's very important that we encourage our young professionals to get part in the standards making process now, because they are tuned to work on those machines, work on those environments, on robots. I think it's very important that we get their voice heard now, get them involved in standards making now, and rather than putting any delay further. So yeah, my encouragement is to employees and everyone to see how they can participate in the standards making based on their experience, based on their knowledge, expertise, and so on.
And how about you, Kat?
I think that in terms of, with my younger self, I'm not sure really what I would say, but you got involved at exactly the right time. I think that I had it for quite a few years before I got involved, and so it was nice to have that basis and that standing, and I didn't leave it too long. And I know that a lot of other people do kind of worry about, that they put it off, and then it's kind of, it's never too late and it's never too early. Go when it's right for you. But you gain so much from it, from a personal development point of view, from putting stuff back as well, and meeting other professionals. It's always good to meet other professionals from different industries or similar industries and have that comparison between the two of you. So or three of you, how many of you that there are in a room. And with this new and emerging technology, and robotics being an example, it's the young engineers and scientists that we have, and people that we have working on them today, they'll be working on them in the future. So why not be involved from the start? Why kind of get on when they've already been written? It's like, help us write them and be part of that community, and let's sort of work on technology together. In terms of employers, the biggest thing that I would kind of say to employers is, do not view standards as being something that hinders design and innovation. It in no way inhibits design and innovation. It is guidance and it is a tool, and you just need to learn how to use that tool and get the most out of it. It's not something that is mandatory. It is something that is literally there to help you. So accept that help, and that will be the best thing in terms of getting your designs to really go well, and marketing yourself as a company.
Kat, I think you've you introduced an idea for a future podcast there around the relationship between standards and innovation and design. So thank you for that. I think you're absolutely right. So before we finish, I just want to say that for more information on the themes raised in this episode, go to www.bsigroup.com/education. You can also find links in the episode notes. Do please rate and review this episode wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have any ideas for future podcasts, then please email them to education@bsigroup.com. So all that remains for me to say is thank you, Kat.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It's been lovely to spend time with you.
And thank you, Navdeep.
Thank you very much, both. And it's been a great experience.
And thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
And to thank you for listening.